Hello there. Today I wanted to talk about a topic that I've kind of been thinking about for a while, the magic faucet. This is a term that my dad actually came up with. This is not my invention, but I think it's a perfect description of the mindset that people have when they think about water. So, when people think about water, at least people who live in urbanized areas, especially, and some people who live in rural areas and maybe just don't think too deeply about things, which is, I'd say, fairly common. Um, People think about water as if it comes out of what we like to call the magic faucet. And what's the magic faucet? Well, basically, the magic faucet is this mystical thing that you just turn it on and water comes out, right? And you don't really have to think about like where that water came from, what its origin story is, so to speak. You just kind of think about, well, it came out of the magic faucet, right? So it doesn't really matter if I use a whole bunch of it, as long as I can pay my bill, right? I can plant grass. I can, use, if I have enough money, I can green the desert. It turns water into purely a commodity without considering, its actual limited quantity that, exists in the world. And so when people live their lives by the magic faucet, they don't have to worry about like how long the shower is that they take, what, strategies they might use to conserve water in their daily lives and in their gardens, um, or just lawn. A lot of people just have lawns, honestly, not really gardens. But when you live in a rural area, you think about the water that you're using. It's something that regularly occurs to you. Where is this coming from? Uh, what kind of supply is available? What's the quality of it? These things all become considerations when you live in a rural area where water might be a little more scarce, um, or just where you're aware that, hey, my water comes out of this well or off of my roof. You start to just be more aware of that water, especially, and it's really a consideration when you haul water, because now you have to pay more to haul more water sooner. Um, if hang on one second, I gotta remind myself that's B4. Um, anyway, if you haul water, you're thinking constantly about how, as I use this water in my home or in my garden, I am using it up. It's limited. And also, if you live in the Southwest and you've lived in the Southwest for a while, I think you, by your nature, are going to start being more aware of the water that you're using. I think a lot of people that live in wetter areas, maybe more temperate climates, they don't really consider the water. It just is magic faucet. But I think that's becoming more and more of a thing that people need to be aware of in the modern world. Um, I think a lot of people haven't really had to worry too much because they have money. Maybe they live somewhere where to them water is limitless. Um, but it's becoming more and more of a consideration, especially because the water that is available in a lot of those areas is becoming more and more contaminated. And so, what used to be a plentiful resource and very clean is now becoming somewhat scarce, maybe somewhat polluted, difficult to come by. And I think it's been time to stop living by the magic faucet. It's they say ignorance is bliss, but not really, because the moment that this problem sneaks up on you and you're no longer able to get clean, drinkable, usable water, suddenly the magic faucet idea just falls apart like a house of cards. So where we live, the water is not very good quality. I've had to haul water many times. Um, I now, now when I think about building a home, I think about rainwater catchment. To me, a well in the southwest of the United States is stupid. It's the wrong way to do things. I mean, it's some drought insurance, but really we should be using our wells as insurance, not as our thing that we rely on 100% of the time. And the majority of the Southwest, we are 100% dependent upon our wells. And if they go dry, communities disappear. I mean, it's that bad. So I think we really should be living frugally when it comes to water and considering, what the real impact of our use of that water is, and considering the children. I mean, I hate to bring that up. I hate that argument when people bring it up. Oh, think about the children. Like, yeah, what about me? What about the children that already grew up? But I do think about that. That like where I live now, I don't know if there will be well water available to future generations. And I've watched it run out in communities. It does run out. That's a real thing that does happen. It's not just a myth. It's not just a scare tactic. I've seen it with my own eyes that it does run out. And once it runs out, it's gone. There's no going back from that situation where it's run out. So, um, yeah, and I don't think most people in urbanized areas even consider their water supply. They just, somebody will figure out, how to provide me with water. Like, do you think anyone really cares about you and your ability to get water? Everyone's in it for themselves, more or less. They're all thinking about short-term gains, right? Short-term money. They'll be dead by the time any of these problems affect them, or would affect them. So, for the most part, people are not considering the future of water and how available it is and whether or not clean water will be available to their children or their children's children. They're just, in it for the money, in it for the short term, and that's all that really matters to the majority of people, I think. So, that's my purpose here. I just want to make people aware that, like, okay, so where I live, right, water is limited, it is poor quality, and it's non-renewable, meaning, what the water we use, both drinking water and the water for our garden and our showers and things of that nature, which, by the way, those are separated as well. We don't have the luxury of drinkable tap water, and I kind of think that's something that maybe goes a bit too far. I don't think people understand what it actually takes to make tap water drinkable and keep it drinkable, especially on a large scale. But we don't have that here. We just have well water. It comes out of the well at whatever quality, which is terrible. Very brackish, very sulfury, very just nasty water. And that's what we have to make do with. And I don't think people think about it. And then we've got this valley below us that, people farm in that valley. They flood irrigate with the wells. And I've met people that live down there. I used to live down there that, talk about that their well is at the bottom of the aquifer, and they've got, it's been estimated that they've got maybe 3 to 5 years left. I mean, that's, where we live, they're talking about 30 years roughly. That's still, I mean, so what? Basically, I pay off my mortgage and I'm out of water. Yikes, So that's kind of a depressing reality and something I think about a lot. We've had situations where, Like my girlfriend recently, I think she'd be okay with me sharing this. She recently had a dream where we were all having to pack up and leave because we ran out of water, and so everyone had to leave all at once, and it was a mad rush to get out of here because we're all trying to evacuate to somewhere that still had water. And I think there's, on one hand, that is just, an anxiety at this time, but on the other hand, it's kind of a reasonable prediction that we might, actually all have to leave because we're out of water completely. And there are ways to mitigate it. So, I've been talking about the problem. Let's talk about how to mitigate that problem. Well, first of all, stop farming in the desert. Stop mass farming in the desert. Growing a garden is fine, I think, but farming and irrigate, like drip irrigate, conserve water when you're gardening, but and water at night and in the morning, and don't have a lawn. There's no reason to have a lawn in the desert. But farm in areas that are temperate. But that's too complicated. Oh, it's not as productive. And okay, I get it. It's giant corporations that are doing this, but it's BS. It's not going to work, And so, if we live our lives by the magic faucet, it's just not a sustainable life, right? It's not a sustainable world that we're creating for our children and our children's children to live by the magic faucet. And I think we're also creating generations of people that are very poorly adapted to disaster, right? When their lives, they're going to be the generation of people that have to deal with a huge amount of disaster. But we're not preparing them for it. We're just, it'll be fine. I'll be dead by then. Like that's not a reasonable, responsible mindset. It's screwed up. It's twisted, and so that's just kind of I want to get people to where they're aware to realize that a lot of the world is basically out of fresh water, or so close that we might as well say that we're out. It's close enough to be a major problem, and rather than taking all the measures we possibly can at this time to dig ponds, to catch water, utilize that water, catch rainwater on our roofs, store rainwater, because that's another thing is that we've seen increasingly sporadic rainfall where here we just got a foot of snow overnight, and it had been super dry up until that point. So it was dry, foot of snow, boom. If we could have taken that water and caught it and put it in a big tank, that might be able to, what we've got on the ground now would easily get us, just on this acre, would get us through, the whole year. But we have to let it go to waste because we don't have a setup to catch it. I mean, these are the things we should be subsidizing, not, these farms that hardly generate any income for the state while using, 90% of the water. It's just insane. And that's, I very much believe in farming. I believe in fact, that farming and crops are way undervalued, considering how difficult it actually is in the world we live in today to grow anything. And yet, rather than subsidizing innovation in that space, we subsidize cheap crop prices. It's like, rather than it's just, we're so irresponsible, right? The price of food, people complain about the price of food because they're poor, and I get it, but grow your own food. Instead of complaining about the price of food, why don't you set up a little bit of irrigation, set up a garden, and grow your own food? And do that all over the place instead of using 100% of the water that's available in the Central Valley of California and then boom, hard collapse and everybody's panicking because there's no food anywhere. Why don't we, plan for those things? Why don't we, plan in advance, at all, ever, at any point? It baffles me that we're so far behind the curve on everything, and we see it happening right in front of us. I think a lot of it, has to do with people being really busy and kind of enslaved, and so they don't necessarily ever slow down and think about things. You know, people don't tend to slow down and think about like the reality of what's going on in their lives or ways to change it, and they don't make that a priority. You know, people don't make change in those ways a priority in their lives. They just, you know, keep doing what they've been doing because they are unwilling to consider any pattern changes. And I think, you know, ultimately our addiction to consistency and patterns is kind of what is dooming us here. You know, we're not setting ourselves up for success, that's for sure. So, you know, just some thoughts on the Magic Faucet. I think we've got hope. I think there's a good chance that we could correct this. I tend to be the person that I try to, even when I'm feeling really dark and down about it, I try to maintain some sort of hope, because I think, you know, if you're hopeless, then that's a great cop out where, you know, you don't have to do anything about a situation. You know, you can just give up at that point. I don't think that's the right approach. I think we need to do our best, as long as we're still here, to, you know, increase the chances of our survival in the long term. And, you know, for all of y'all out there that are constantly just waiting for the apocalypse, I got news for you. The apocalypse has been predicted to happen every single year for hundreds of years, or possibly thousands, by at least one person. Everybody always thinks the world is about to end. This is nothing new. This is not something that we just came up with. This is not something that people are just figuring out. This is something every single year people think the world is going to end. And large groups of them. There are whole cults that, you know, are established on the premise that the world is about to end, right? And it's a great cop-out, because it's like, all I have to do is just wait for the world to end. I don't have to do anything about it. I can just, wait, B4, 4. Anyway, I can just wait for the world to end. Like, why do I need to take any responsibility for what's happening if we're already screwed? It's a cop-out. At the end of the day, it's a lazy cop-out. And it's funny, because these are some of the hardest working people sometimes that believe that the world is about to end. Like, dude, the world ain't about to end. It's just going to keep continuing in the direction it's been going in for a very long time. Now, might we make it impossible for us to live, or extremely uncomfortable? That's totally a possibility. We can do that. But should we choose that route? Is that our goal? You know, are we just wanting to die? Is that, you know, I don't get it. Like, why fixate on that? Why make that your life's thing? You know, what determines the course of your life is that the world is about to end, instead of just like living your life, you know, and doing the best that you can. Because, you know, in case, you know, I always hear this argument from those same people that are like, well, what if you're wrong? And what if, you know, what if I'm right? And da 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 da. Isn't it best that you like abide by my rules because I might be right? And it's like, let me turn that around on you. My thing is very actionable. It involves action, here and now. Make this world sustainable. Work on the way that you do things. Do them in a sustainable manner. Because what if I am right? Then we're really screwed. We're stuck here on a planet that we're killing. So, you know, what if I'm right? I'm going to turn that whole BS argument around. Just say, what if I'm right? You know, why don't we put the effort in to make this world a better place? Because, I mean, you know, believing in something that you can't see here and now, which I understand, you know, but belief doesn't require action, really. It doesn't require, you know, it doesn't require major change. It just requires you to believe. But, you know, things you can see in front of you that are actionable, those require change, right? Those require you to change your behavior. And I think that's a lot of why people choose belief over action. It's like the easy way out. They don't have to do anything, you know? Start a damn garden, man. There's no reason not to at this point. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, right? It's just, we need to start taking action. Set up rain catchment. Stop living life by these like magical thinking entities. The magic faucet, the magic toilet paper machine, the magic septic system. All of these things, they have a real world implication. We don't just live in our little spaceships not affecting the outside world. We always have an impact on the outside world and the world around us. And if we don't do something, we will eventually be screwed. And we might already be screwed, but it's not, when just because we're already screwed, if that's the case, it's not the time to give up. It's the time to try even harder, because there's always some chance that we could reverse course. So that's what I have to say today. As always, hope you enjoyed, my little rant here. I've got more coming right now, as you can see, working on the garden. Out of work right now. Well, not out of work, halfway out of work due to some injuries, and it just kind of make it really hard for me to actually do my job effectively, and a lot of pain, which is very frustrating and stuff. But I'm still doing something, doing what I can while I can, taking the time that I can to make some kind of impact. But I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. See you next time.